USC football has been as good as any program in the country in the transfer portal this year, and they might not be done. Let's go.
Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view if you're watching on YouTube every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This is your number one source to stay up to date with the Conference of Champions every single weekday. And those of you watching on YouTube might be noticing, Spencer, that's not your usual background. Where's your studio? Where are you right now? The answer is I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, visiting a friend, part of a little vacation that I'm taking this week. The podcast hits the road. I'm hitting the road, but I wouldn't let my, travel plans I wouldn't let that stop me from bringing you the content that you come here for every day. I appreciate all of you that have liked and subscribed already. Please continue to do so. Those numbers keep going up, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You know what USC appreciates a lot? The fact that the transfer portal can now be used to retool your roster very, very quickly. I have got to stop putting myself in tough English-speaking situations there. But anyway, and yes, I am recording this at night, and it's 82 degrees. Arizona, pretty great place sometimes. So let's get to a couple potential transfers here for the Trojans and the conference writ large, because there's a big name in the portal I'll get to later. But this story came out over the weekend, and Jordan Addison is in the portal. Now, most of you are probably asking yourself, Spencer, who's Jordan Addison? Well, that's what I'm here for, everybody. I'm here to tell you those sorts of things, because that's a name you should definitely be monitoring. He was the 2021 Beletnikoff winner. If you don't know what that is, it is given annually to college football's top wide receiver. He has not officially entered the transfer portal as I record this on Sunday night, but there are a lot of reports indicating that he just might. And one of the places that he is mulling over as a potential destination, some would even say, based on the information we know right now, it's the lead candidate to be his next destination is USC. Now, this would be another tremendous addition via the transfer portal for Lincoln Riley and company, who have done a sensational job utilizing that new element of college football where you can get guys and have them be immediately eligible. 24/7 Sports agrees. They currently have the second highest rated transfer class of 2022, not recruiting class. Their high school recruiting class is down further, coaching change. You totally expect that sort of stuff. They're already bringing in some big time names for 2023. They've got Malachi Nelson. They're going to be just fine in that front. But in the transfer portal, in the here and now, they're doing a really good job. And so that's why this has a lot of people's attention, because Jordan Addison is an elite playmaker on the outside. And if you were to put him opposite Mario Williams with all the other names that USC has, don't forget Terrell Bynum is in there, the Washington transfer. Gary Bryant Jr. looks like a potential breakout candidate. They've got some weapons for Caleb Williams. But if you put that caliber of a receiver, a Jordan Addison kind of guy, opposite Mario Williams, you now can't as easily, from the defensive coordinator's perspective, bracket a guy like Mario Williams or double team or, shift all your attention there. Because if you have Jordan Addison on the other side, that's very, very dangerous. So that could be an elite tandem, but it's not confirmed yet. He hasn't even officially entered the portal, but that is a name to follow here in the coming days, maybe even weeks. USC is, I think, doing a good job of changing their perception here with the portal in terms of how they're viewed with Lincoln Riley. I think that that's definitely helping them out in that sense, right? It's not just that they're getting good players, but it's also, going back to being a destination, because a few years ago, was a guy like this going to consider going to USC? Maybe not. But speaking of the transfer portal, now that Lincoln Riley and company have clearly figured out how to use it and how to sell players on their vision, there's a big name in there, and this could be an intra-conference move. I believe I'm using the correct interpretation there of the word intra. I believe intra is within and inter is cross. So like inter-conference would be Big 12 to the Pac-12, but intra-conference is one to another. And I haven't seen anything to the likes of a top list of teams for Jermaine Lowell, the Arizona State transfer. But I have to imagine USC would be a leading candidate there. Now, again, I haven't seen or read any reports. If there are out there, feel free, drop them in the comments below so that people can stay up to date here. That's just reality of the podcasting world. Sometimes stuff comes out a little bit later. But Arizona State continues to have a litany of players leave their program, and Herm Edwards and company are just struggling out there in Tempe. And I was on their campus the other day. It's very impressive. So if they can ever get stuff to kind of settle down, build some momentum, they should be able to sell players on going there and staying there. But thus far, they haven't been able to do that. And so Jermaine Lowell is in the portal. Now, he has said that he could return to the school, but I think a guy like this should be a top target for a couple of schools, most notably among them USC. Would it be awesome to get Jordan Addison? Yes. Does USC need Jordan Addison in order to score a bunch of points in 2022? As the Magic 8 Ball would say, the answer is no. They're going to score a lot of points regardless, just by virtue of having Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. That's a great start. But they've got a bunch of great offensive pieces around. The offensive line, maybe a little bit more of a question mark. But from a skill position perspective, USC is doing just fine. So do they need Jordan Addison? No. But I've talked about here on the show before. USC is kind of lacking in the defense department coming off of last season. Now they've added a couple of transfers who should definitely help them out. Shane Lee, the linebacker from Alabama. But this is the sort of guy that they should be after. And I'll tell you why after I tell you about Built Bar. Summer is coming, Pac-12 fans. And you know what the best part about Built Bars are? They're covered in 100% real chocolate. All of them. They're healthy. They're delicious. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. I'm playing a lot of golf down here in Arizona, and I will continue to do so when I go to Southern California here in the coming days. And don't worry, the pod is going with me on the road over there as well. Fear not. Built Bars are always in my golf bag, and you should have them there too, or wherever you need a healthy snack. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. This guy, Jermaine Lowell, is probably not a name you know very well because Arizona State has been a decent program over the last several years with Herm Edwards. They've been respectable, typically a 7, 8, maybe 9-win team, but they don't generate a lot of headlines. There's not a huge following for Arizona State the way that there is for a USC, an Oregon, a Utah, or a Washington, which, I'd probably consider the 4 biggest brands in the Pac-12. In terms of order, is probably something of that sort, but that's something I would have to give full thought to on a later episode here. But USC is, I think they should be going after this guy. I don't know if they are, but they would be foolish not to because they need defensive playmakers on that side of the ball. And Jermaine Lowell is exactly that. So I'll get to the other schools he could go to, but let's start with USC and why anyone should want him. He is coming off of a torn triceps in 2021. I don't know how much that's factoring into his decision to leave the school, but a lot of players who have not been injured are deciding to leave Arizona State right now. And so the opportunity is ripe. The fruit is ripe for the picking there for other teams to come in and snag some guys who are pretty talented. And Jermaine Lowell is certainly one of those sorts of players. In his 3 years with Arizona State, he played in just 27 games, but he totaled 122 tackles in those 27 games and 20 sacks. 20 sacks in 27 games. Anywhere you go, in any conference, at any level, you will struggle to find guys who can produce like that. And I list USC as the number 1 team that could potentially be going after him in the Pac-12 conference because they've been better at the transfer portal than anybody else right now. They're the hottest transfer portal name probably in the country. because it's seen as, a big revival with Lincoln Riley there. And how could you not think that? That's what everybody thinks is going to happen. Certainly looks that way because he's already got that brand built back up to the point where everybody immediately, not after a season of success, Lincoln Riley hasn't coached a football game yet, just immediately, by way of him being there, is making them an attractive destination again. So if you're a guy like Jermaine Lowell, who's had success in the Pac-12 conference, who has a year or two of eligibility left, why wouldn't you want to go to USC? I mean, defensive opportunities, they shouldn't be short in terms of the depth chart. And this guy has been, when he's healthy, one of the most productive players in the Pac-12 conference. So I think that there's a lot of fit there. There are two other schools, though, who I think should also be in the running. Number one, UCLA. They've needed defensive help as well. And in terms of their defensive front, I don't think they have a set list of starters. Now, they do have a pair of brothers, twins from North Texas, who I talked about last week on the show when I was breaking down their spring game, who are potentially going to be kind of, mainstays on the defensive line. But I think with the production ceiling that Jermaine Lowell offers, I think anywhere he goes in the Pac-12, he's going to be a leading candidate to slide in and start and make an impact right away. So UCLA, I think, can make that pitch pretty easily. And, I'm not ruling out another school in the Pac-12 like a Utah that's had great defenses over the years, or a Washington, or, any other school. I'm just saying which ones I think can make potentially the best pitch in terms of, playing time and team caliber as well. I think Utah would fall just a little bit below the list. But the reason that I've got Arizona above Utah in terms of where he would be most likely to transfer within the conference is because it's within the state. And so that's a very real consideration for some guys that, I don't want to go that far from home. Like, maybe he likes the state of Arizona, but just isn't feeling it there at Arizona State. Jed Fish, that program has a lot of offseason momentum. Now, if you're thinking about going to a contender, Arizona is not there yet. And so a school like Utah or Oregon or USC or UCLA would make the most sense. But I put Arizona there because he clearly has, if he's been there for several years, lifestyle does matter to these guys. I mean, they're factoring it into their considerations when they think about where they want to go to school initially, and then if they want to transfer and where they want to go. All that stuff comes into play. On-field stuff probably is a bigger factor than off-field lifestyle, but if you ever look at a recruit in any sport and think, boy, why did he go to that school? They aren't very good. Like, maybe there was some stuff under the table happening. I'm not suggesting that in any specific scenario. I'm just making broad generalizations here. But maybe another part of it is, man, he just liked the campus. He just liked the lifestyle. He liked the area around it. That's part of it too. And so that's why I'd put Arizona on there. And as a program, again, that doesn't have, a tremendous amount of talent on it, if he wants to be that sort of guy and go somewhere where he can be confident he can play, Arizona is a good place for that. If I were him, I would probably look at the LA schools first and foremost, just because USC's got a bunch of momentum there right now, and I think it can win a lot of games. But UCLA does as well. DTR and Zach Charbonnet are back. Chip Kelly's in his fifth year. That's a program that's trending up. And I think he'd be able to slide in for both of those teams and play right away. And I'm sure he could on any Pac-12 roster, as I mentioned. But I think those three schools, if he goes within the Pac-12 conference, I think those would be the top options that he would consider: USC, UCLA, and then Arizona, just for, mostly for a geographical reason there. And, I think that I'll have a good shot at getting him, but I think you can make some solid pitches there with each of those schools. And, man, that's just a lot of production. That's a lot of production, in his career so far. 122 tackles, 20 sacks in 27 games. Who wouldn't want that guy? Who wouldn't want that guy? Let's shift gears here and move to the NFL draft, because I think it says a good amount of things that we kind of already know about the Pac-12 conference for football. But let's look at the first round draft picks here. So Kayvon Thibodeau, Drake London, Trent McDuffie, and Devin Lloyd are all taken in the first round. They're 25 players selected total this year from the Conference of Champions, which is not an amazing number. It's not a great number either. It's not terrible. It's just kind of like, that's not the performance that you're hoping for. I think that there were some guys who should have been drafted in the conference that weren't. But on the whole, 25, it's a little underwhelming. It was tied for third among the Power 5 conferences with the Big 12. And the only Power 5 conference below them was the ACC, which had 21. The American Conference, meanwhile, which I'm sure some of you think of as like, oh, it's just it's a cakewalk schedule, yada, yada. They had 19 draft picks this year. So there were only 6 more draft-worthy NFL caliber players in the Pac-12 than in the American. That's the current state of recruiting and churning out NFL caliber players in the Pac-12 conference. And that's not a great place for the league to be. I think it's a credit to the American and the growth that league has seen. They had Sauce Gardner go number 4 to the Jets, and a flurry of guys taken in the first and second rounds over the last couple of years and all throughout the draft as well. But it's not a great place for the Pac-12 to be in, where they're that close to a conference like the American, because they should be above it, right? Every Power 5 conference should be above it. And if I were hosting Locked On ACC, I'd be saying the same thing. I'd be like, whoa, how in the world are we 2 NFL draft prospects better? Like, that's speaking to the overall quality and caliber of players that you have in your conference, right? And 4 were taken in the first round. That's not bad, but the Big Ten had 48 players drafted this year. The SEC had 65. 65 and 48 compared to 25. So when we talk about recruiting and we talk about how that translates to guys going to the pros and then overall success on the field on Saturdays, which is, of course, the most important thing, all these things are tied together. We don't talk about them just for fun. We talk about them because they tend to matter. What are the 2 best football conferences? The SEC and the Big Ten. Who's producing the most NFL caliber players? The SEC and the Big Ten. These things are all correlated. And I'll tell you about the geographical importance of recruiting for the Pac-12 conference after I tell you about BetOnline, your number one source for all your sports betting, stats, and sports info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season. Go Mariners. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So when you look at the breakdown of where guys came from this year and the caliber of players that were taken in the first round, just looking at the first round, and then we'll close today with the players that the Pac-12 actually had taken in the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft. There were 5 from the state of California, some of which had ended up going elsewhere, right? We've seen that especially with quarterbacks the last couple of years. I don't expect that to continue to be a trend with Lincoln Riley there at USC. I think that's going to boost the conference's power to keep California guys on the West Coast, because as USC goes after these guys, some of them are not only going to commit to the Trojans, but other schools like Oregon or Utah are going to go after them even harder, I think, because the threat of USC is there, right? And it's ever present. So 5 from the state of California, 4 from the state of Texas, 3 from the state of Georgia. And then there were a bunch of other states that had, 2 or 1 player selected this year in the draft. But again, you look at the number of stars that guys had. This is in the first round. You had 11 5-stars, 11 4-stars. So 22 of the first 30 NFL draft picks this year were 4 and 5-star guys. Those are the sorts of players you have to get. They just are. There were 6 3-stars and then a couple guys who were 2-star or lower. So when you're talking about the importance of recruiting to creating a product on the field that is competitive with the Big Ten or the SEC, it does have to begin on the recruiting trail. It's why we talk about it in the offseason here so much, because this stuff matters. It translates. And this year's draft is yet another example of that. Georgia alone, this is an amazing stat, by the way. Georgia won the national championship this year. They had 15 players drafted. I'll say that again. Georgia had 15 players drafted. That's an unconscionable number. Pac-12 had 25 as a league. That's where we're at. And the conference as a whole, individual teams have to do better if the league is going to be more competitive than what it has been the last several years, because it's just been so below par and the branding of it is terrible. And Lincoln Riley going to USC, that's a big step in the right direction. Big step for on-field performance and also for off-field recruiting stuff and, branding power of the conference. It's huge. Absolutely massive. But there's still a long way to go here. And I think that work is starting to happen. Let's end today's show talking about the 4 first-round draft picks. So Kayvon Thibodeau goes number 5 to the New York Giants. And he made quite the entrance on stage. And, he started to make some comments, that were, I think, kind of subtly addressing the work ethic concerns or, being committed on every play or how all in are you in football. I think he did that a little bit, but he also made a very showy entrance, which I thought was, very Kayvon Thibodeau-esque based on what we know about him at this point in his career. I don't think he silenced all of those doubts by going in the way he did, but he goes to the Giants, who are a mess of an organization. And he and Evan Neal were picks number 5 and picks number 7, respectively, the offensive tackle from Alabama. And the Giants just need players. They just need players, and they need Kayvon Thibodeau to hit his ceiling as a prospect. And there are some scouts and draft analysts who, cast some doubt on that in the last couple months about whether or not he can. The Giants need him to, and they need him to be that sort of anchor. He's capable of doing it, but now doing it in the league is of course, a whole nother matter. Drake London, you talk about Pac-12 branding in the NFL. Drake London goes to Atlanta, where Marcus Mariota just signed to, in theory at least, be their starting quarterback. The Falcons ended up taking Desmond Ridder later. I think Mariota was a better college player, and I think he'll end up being a better pro as well. So I don't think that Marcus Mariota will have a problem winning that starting job. Drake London is such a nice receiver for Mariota to have, because he is an elite possession receiver first and foremost. And that's something that Mariota needs, because he struggled to move the ball downfield at times. That's, part of the reason he didn't work out in Tennessee. There were injuries, coaching turnover, and he just didn't develop the way that he needed to in terms of pushing the ball down the field. But short and intermediate routes, Mariota has been solid at that, to above average, I think, in the NFL for his entire career. And he could have a nice rapport with Drake London by the time that they get things rolling again. So I think that's a nice pick there for Atlanta, and no Calvin Ridley this year, which is just anyway. I don't need to go into that. I think that's a really nice pick by Atlanta. Trent McDuffie to the Chiefs. Chiefs defense is so weird. It's just, it's hit and miss. It's all over the place, but they have had success with Washington cornerbacks before. They had Marcus Peters, who, also played for the Rams, and Washington, very much developing a brand as a school, as a place that generates quality defensive backs. You have Elijah Molden out there, and Budda Baker, and Shaq Thompson was a safety before he went down to play linebacker. And you've got Marcus Peters, and now you've got Trent McDuffie. And they had another guy taken in the second round whose name is just going right out of my head. I mean, straight out of my head right now. And I'm going to look it up. Um, that's just, sometimes your mind just blanks. Sometimes your mind just blanks. Kyler Gordon is his name. I've been looking at him all week long. Anyway, so McDuffie to the Chiefs, I think that is has the potential to be a nice pick. But I tell you what, not just the biggest conference steal of the first round, I think the biggest overall steal of the first round is Devin Lloyd to the Jags. Where they got him, I thought was ridiculous. I thought was absolutely ridiculous that they were able to get him that late in the round. I mean, that was, to me, really surprising. And look, teams have a lot of different needs, and it just, for him to be the 27th overall pick, at some point a team needed to look and go, okay, who's best available? And it was Devin Lloyd, but the Jags got a good one. The Jags got a really, really good player there at number 27, and I am a fan of that selection for Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, who, much like the Giants, they just need playmakers. And I think Devin Lloyd can provide that for them, and I love that pick so much. I would have taken Devin Lloyd in the top 15 for sure. I mean, at one point he was projected as a top 10 pick, and then he fell kind of the top 15. For him to go to 27, I think we could be looking back a year from now and say that was a major, major steal. If you have any questions about Pac-12 draft picks that you want answered here on the show, DM me at smalls_55 or at LO_P12 or LO_Pac12, sorry, on Twitter. Tweet with the hashtag AskLOP12, and I can answer your question right here on the show. I appreciate everybody bearing with me as I'm set up outside of my usual studio. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.